What's going on, everybody? You are listening to their live podcast of Real Steel Sports on Spreaker Web Radio with Mr. James M. Krasnerick. We had an interesting weekend on Conference Championship Sunday, didn't we? All I'm going to say is that we were treated to two games that did not disappoint. Actually, I should say one game that did not disappoint. And that game would be the death battle preview, so-called, between the Seahawks and the 49ers. But I'll get to that in a minute, actually a little later on. But I'm going to take this time and I'm going to talk about what I felt I saw in the AFC title game between the Broncos and Patriots. For one, I got to tip my hat to both teams. The Patriots were shorthanded all year long. They stayed together, they hung tough, and they deserved to be in this game. And the Broncos, credit to them, the best offense by far in league history, and just the way that this team moved the football was just incredible. But for all that it's worth, there was a poll on Sports Nation, and the poll was, do I think Denver won the game, or do I think New England lost the game? Honestly, I think it was a little bit of both, but if I had to pick one, it'd be more New England losing it. My final score for that game was, I believe, 34-31, I believe, somewhere on that line. I was just really surprised at just how the Patriots' offense just did not show up. For the record, if the voice quality on this podcast doesn't sound great, I'm doing things on my mic to try to get it stronger on my new computer. Not as strong as my microphone on my old computer. Probably end up getting a newer microphone, a USB one, in the near future, so that when my sports shows will sound even better. So hopefully that happens sooner than later. But in that game, the Patriots offense just never got off the bus. They were still on the bus in the third quarter. I equate it to this: the air in Denver. The fact that Brady hasn't played in Denver in a few years. And I think it took him and his receivers some time to adjust. I think he overthrew it. The fact that it was warmer than normal in that time of year in Denver. The fact it made the air even thinner on top of how being thin it already was. That just goes to show how much of an impact that can play. But that had a little impact. But I also saw something on ESPN, First Take, and it kind of goes in this topic. They're talking about, the Skip Bayless and Stephen A. Smith talking about Aqib Talib's impact. And Skip Bayless, I'm going to shut you up once and for all on this issue. You're talking about, the Patriots had a less time of possession because they couldn't get Broncos off the field because Aqib Talib wasn't there. Demaryius Thomas had over 100 yards because Talib wasn't there. You know what? Thomas wouldn't have had over 100 yards if Talib was there. He might have had 40, 50 tops. But to say Talib's absence is the reason why the Patriots lost that game, you're full of shit. And I'll tell you why. Because, you ready for this? I don't look at the amount of possession gigantic difference as saying, New England just couldn't get Denver off the field. That's not the reason. The reason why the time of possession was so one-sided was because New England kept going 3 and out. Because they kept shooting themselves in the foot and kept having to punt. I've never seen a Belichick offense look so flat in a big game before. Brady was off. Amendola didn't register a catch, had one throw targeted to him. Edelman was okay, I guess. The running game never got going. I don't even think they managed 50 or 60 yards. And I said in my pregame show, that my pregame opinion, that if the running game is shut down to any degree and you have to have Brady beat Peyton Manning and his weapons with Julian Edelman and Danny Amendola, he's not going to do it. I was right. He couldn't do it. I mean, Brady didn't have a good game, obviously. But, Aqib Talib wouldn't have made the difference. The final score may have been 23-20, may have been a little closer, but shit, it probably would have made that big a difference in the grand scheme of things. Denver would have still been going on to the Super Bowl. In fact, that might actually even hurt New England more. It really would have. Because Manning targeted Thomas a lot during the game. And if Thomas is on an island with Aqib Talib, that just means that he picks on his other cornerbacks with Belichick's other cornerbacks with other receivers. I mean, you've got Talib covering Thomas, so that massive matchup's canceled out. Who's covering Decker, Welker, and Julius Thomas over the middle? Chandler Jones ain't covering Julius Thomas in space. Who's the other number 2 quarter for the Patriots? It's the safety, the secondary for the Patriots. Devin McCourty, safety, he's not covering Welker or Decker. Those guys would just have even bigger numbers than they did. If anything, Denver won this game. What allowed Denver to win this game was the fact that Peyton Manning had, in my opinion, the best playoff game of his career because he was in a big moment, and in the big moment, he played well from start to finish. Like, you look at some of the big playoff games he's been in his career, the 2 Super Bowls. In the first Super Bowl, he wasn't good in the first half, was really good in the second. The other Super Bowl, he was really good in the first half, he trailed off in the second. In the few conference title games he's been in, he's played poorly in some of them, and in the one AFC title game he lost, he was terrible in the first half, was really good in the second. I mean, you can look at Peyton Manning's history by half in big playoff games, and he'll have one bad half, one good half. And look at this game. He was good from start to finish. If you just look at the numbers that he put up in that game against the Patriots, he was just so consistent, play in and play out, that it really didn't matter so much what New England did on defense. Peyton still torched them. Completed 32 43 passes for 400 yards and 2 touchdowns. A pass rating of 118.4. I think another good way I can put this in perspective is to say Peyton went out there, played the best complete playoff game of his career, torched a Patriots defense that was okay, but not near good enough to stop in my opinion, most prolific regular season quarterback of all time. In the playoffs, he had one of his best playoff game I think ever from start to finish, and look what happened. Now, as for the Patriots losing the game, again, when Danny Amendola and Julian Edelman are your 2 best receivers, you're not going to win many football games throwing the ball. It was pretty much this. The Patriots defense had to hold Peyton Manning under 25 points, which they didn't do, 24, something like that. And they had to hope the running game wore them down long enough. LeGarrette Blount, Shane Vereen, Stephen Ridley, I didn't hear their names called after the first quarter. They were almost non-factors. LeGarrette Blount, for as dynamite and as explosive he was against the Colts in the division round, he was quiet as a mouse in the championship game. And I attribute that to the fact that the Denver defensive line with Sean Phillips and I can't remember what the other guy's name is, Pot Roast, I think is his nickname. Yeah, Knighton or whatever his name was. That defensive line clamped down on the running game. They were not going to get beat at home by the running game. San Diego couldn't do it, and New England wasn't about to do it either. The coaching, in my opinion, I thought was also a telltale sign because Belichick is usually so good at coaching in big games, and he did not coach a very good football game. I mean, I could sit here and judge and say, he could have done this, he could have done that, but the thing is that I think everyone will agree on is that instead of trying to get Brady comfortable with short underneath routes and use the more or less slot skill set of Edelman and Danny Amendola, he spent too much time attacking the edges and trying to run between the tackles. Belichick wasted, in my opinion, way too much of the game doing that. Hell, they had 3 points in the first 3 quarters. I mean, that's not a kind of offensive output that's going to stay with Peyton Manning. You got to be putting up 20 points by the end of quarter number 3 if you won't even stay with him, because this is an offense that has averaged over the course of the season 38-something points a game. All that I want to chime in on that topic is that, it's not that Brady played poorly. He threw a touchdown pass. He didn't throw a pick. He completed for over 220 yards, but his completion percentage was terrible, and he kept overthrowing his targets. Like, he overthrew his guys by 4 or 5 yards, something I haven't seen Brady do in a long time. Another aspect of this game I thought was interesting was the fact that Denver's defense answered the bell, not just in the run game. They hit Tom Brady point game, and they hit him play in and play out. And that's going to be something Russell Wilson for the Seahawks going to have to keep an eye out in the Super Bowl, because he got hit a lot in the conference championship game by San Francisco. Now, do I think San Francisco's front seven is better than Denver's? Unquestionably. But the fact that Denver runs a 4-3 and San Fran ran a 3-4, and the fact they had to bring extra guys to get pressure as opposed to Denver just sending in their top 4 and that was it, it's going to be a little bit different for Russ to see. It'll be kind of similar to what he went up against when he played the Carolina Panthers in Week 1, and then again that was forever ago, before the team even was good. So that. But as for Peyton Manning, he really did improve his legacy in this game. If he would have lost this game but played well, his legacy would have been tarnished, I think, more than it should have. But if he'd have lost this game and played poorly, then he would have just been blasted. I mean, you look at Peyton Manning's postseason career, and honestly, you can't say that his losses can be attributed to, lack of team effort around him. There's only a couple playoff losses, I think, where his team, including him, truly faltered that day. The games in New England, I think, would be one. The playoff games in New England. I have to probably say the biggest one would be the game against the Saints in the Super Bowl, because in the second half, they just couldn't stop New Orleans, and, 2 or 3 big drops. That team was truly tight, but, Peyton's had some good teams going into the playoffs, offense and defense, and he only has 1 ring to show for in 2 appearances. This will be his 3rd chance to get a Super Bowl. I mean, he's already got 1, but we'll have to see what happens here. For New England going forward, though, made some strides this year without some key guys. I think some of those guys that are older that are on the roster will be replaced. I don't know if Vince Wilfork will be back at 100%. I mean, yeah, he was the key part of the interior line of the Patriots front 4, but they might go somewhere else in that opinion because he's getting old. He's one of the few players still here from the Belichick Super Bowl days. Gerard May will be back, adding to a linebacking core. They'll feature him and Dante Hightower, which is a pretty good linebacking core. You got to keep the lead. He'll be back 100%, next season. So you got a defense that's getting stronger. And if I'm Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, I'd trade up and get a receiver in the draft. I'd go for somebody because if you want to get Brady and Belichick, if you two want to get another chance to go to a Super Bowl, you ain't going to do it with Edelman and Amendola. If those are your number 2 and number 3 options, maybe. But you need a guy that's a game changer. Honestly, they should have made a big play for Wallace in free agency. I knew Wallace would never go there, but it's just saying that they should have because that would have given them what they needed. A respectable threat. Getting Gronk back will help. The running game, if LeGarrette Blount will still be there, that'll be interesting to see how that unfolds. But New England next year, probably another 12-13 wins. I hard time imagining them falling that much off. If anything, it's Brady's age that'll keep back more than anything. Because they played some good teams this year. They gave them some good games, came up just short. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that this team ran into better teams with fewer injuries, and that was the difference. Once this team gets back and healthy, they'll be a contender. And as for Denver, playing next Sunday, not this Sunday, but the Sunday after, February 2nd, in Super Bowl 48 against the Seattle Seahawks, it's going to be a hell of a good game. And what Denver's going to have to do in that game is just do what they did against New England. Hit the quarterback and stop the run. Even though stopping beast mode is a lot harder than stopping LeGarrette Blount. But anyways, for Denver going forward, an impressive win for them. The defense came to play as I suggested they would. I didn't think they'd be that poor I didn't think that they'd play that horribly against the run, but I guess I expected more from Belichick and Brady. But to address the question, do I think the Pats lost it or do I think the Broncos won it? I'd say the ratio is 70-30 Pats lost it because, Peyton played well and the defense played well, but, Brady missed a lot of throws. If he made 2 or 3 of those big throws, that could have been a completely different ballgame. And it wasn't the receiver in the wrong route or not getting open. He blew the throws. Belichick not making any real adjustments and still trying to run the ball whenever it's clear that Denver's not going to let him. Another problem right there. I mean, and the fact is they didn't make any adjustments in the offensive line to try to block the defensive front for Denver. They just kept the same alignment all game long. Brady just kept getting pummeled. I enjoyed it, but still, if you're a Hall of Fame coach, you got to make those adjustments, and he's not been doing that. The last few years in the playoffs, he's not been making adjustments. I mean, you look at the 2009 against the Ravens. They didn't stop the run all game long. 2010, they played against